9:28 p.m. Public question time has concluded. Move to item 3, which is public statement time. Can I please ask Mr. Steve McCabe to come forward from Landcare SJ to read his statement this evening?
President, councillors, I wanted to speak here this evening on behalf of Landcare SJ to share some insights about the valuable benefits that our organisation delivers to the community thanks to the support of and partnership with Shire of Serpentine. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the important role the Shire plays in supporting Landcare SJ. Partnership has enabled us to implement numerous projects that have had a positive impact on the environment, sustainability and the local community. Through our partnership, we've been able to provide education, resources and technical assistance to local landholders, helping them to adopt sustainable practices and reduce their environmental footprint. These practices not only benefit the environment, but also contribute to the economic viability of the region by promoting the long-term environmental sustainability of the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale. Our close connection with the community has allowed us to collaborate with the Shire to develop and maintain parks, natural reserves and public spaces in the region to a degree that would be prohibitively expensive for the Shire to achieve on its own. One example of many I could choose is the fencing and active care of Brickwood Reserve. By working together, we've been able to design and implement projects that enhance the natural beauty of the region, while also providing opportunities for the community to enjoy and implement nature. The benefit of our partnership is the engagement of the local community in our projects. Through events, workshops and other outreach efforts, we've been able to involve members of the community in our work, raising awareness of environmental issues and encouraging community action, engaging over 800 volunteers each year. It's helped to create a sense of pride and ownership in the community, as well as a greater understanding of the importance of environmental sustainability. The support and partnership of the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale have been critical to the success of Landcare SJ. Together, we've been able to deliver numerous benefits to the community, including the development of more sustainable agricultural practices, the enhancement of public spaces, the engagement of the community in environmental issues. We look forward to continuing our partnership with the Shire and working together to create a sustainable and thriving community for future generations.
Thank you, Mr. McCabe. Can I please ask Mr. Bill Denham to come forward and read your statement this evening?
Madam President and councillors, just a quick statement. There's been a bit of a change in personnel, so I just wish to acknowledge a distinct change in attitude and proactiveness in the Shire's parks and maintenance crew in the last fortnight. New personnel appear to be working with the clubs and community to achieve these improved outcomes. Recently, we had the lower oval top dressed and it was playable within a couple of days. It's amazing what can be achieved with the right personnel, so thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Denham. Can I please ask Miss Lara Lorzi, representative of Spagnolo Developments Proprietary Limited, regarding the item 10.1.3 proposed child minding centre, lot 9511 Briggs Road, Byford, to come forward and read your statement this evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. I'm a representative of the developer of the proposed child mining centre at 9511 Briggs Road, Byford, being agenda item 10.1.3. The developer has under contract 6 lots which form part of the Byford Meadows Stage 7 subdivision. I sent an email to all councillors on Friday requesting proposed condition 7 of the officer's recommendation to be deleted. Given time constraints, I will only refer to conditions 7, 3 and 4 tonight. Condition 7.3 requires the construction of more than 200 metres of footpath. Child mining centres typically generate low demand for walking, cycling and scooter trips as most patrons will have prams or young children with them. The WAPC's Transport Impact Assessment Guidelines provide that the typical walkable catchment is 400 metres or a 5-minute distance. There are less than 10 dwellings within a 400-metre walkable catchment along the route of the required footpath. The number of childcare patrons or staff likely to use this path would be minimal, if any. The construction of this footpath is premature as the need is not warranted at this time or by our centre. Condition 7.4 requires us to fully fund the design and upgrade of 160 metres of Briggs Road South to an urban standard. Our transport impact statement provides that only 40% of traffic generated by our development is estimated to use this section of Briggs Road. This equates to 180 daily trips generated, being a 4.7% increase on existing volumes. 34 AM and PM peak trips, equivalent to around an 8% increase. In accordance with the WAPC Traffic Impact Assessment Guidelines, as our development increases traffic by less than 10% along the relevant section of road, it is unlikely to have a material impact on that section of road. In addition, there are other developments proposed along Briggs Road that will also be adding traffic. These have been referenced in my email. One of those developments is adding traffic to the relevant section of road in a very similar volume to our site. We also understand that a school site is proposed along Briggs Road, which is going to be opposite our site, and this school would clearly add considerable traffic in a much more material way than our site. The cost to design and construct the footpath and the road upgrades are very significant and would make our development unviable. As we can demonstrate that our site is not creating a material need for the proposed footpath or for the upgrading of Briggs Road, it is not equitable or reasonable for these conditions to be imposed on our development. We request that conditions 7, 3 and 4 are deleted this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your statement this evening. Can I please ask Mrs. Lee Bond to come forward and read your statement this evening?
I've attended many Serpentine Jarrahdale Shire Council meetings for well over 20 years and have seen the very worst of both councillors, council officers and gallery members. The OCM on the 17th of April 2023 was below its form of behaviour and brought this council into a level of disrepute of enormous magnitude. Gallery members should be able to attend meetings without running the gauntlet of abuse displayed at this meeting. Integrity, honesty and any hope of decency was abandoned to attack individuals, and this has left our shire with a stain not even bleach will remove. Thanks for stealing my thunder.
Thank you for your statement this evening, Mrs. Bond. Could I please ask Mr. Ethelwig to please come forward and read your statement this evening?
Thank you, Madam President, for the opportunity to comment on agenda item 10.2.3 concerning land care. I'm coming in from a slightly different direction. I just put it aside in here. I'm not aware that the EO from land care was going to make a statement. So I'm here from a different perspective. I'm coming from having been involved in land care for the last 30 years. So now this agenda item is going to provide a 5-year certainty of ongoing finance to the Land Care SJ Board. Land care in the Shire has over the last 30 years contributed to the enhancement and the sustainability of our natural environment. Previously, the Land Care District Committee and now Land Care SJ Incorporated provide access to grants and natural resource management funds. They support the 250 residents with access to free birch plants, coordinating the Are You OK revegetation planting days. And there are some 500 volunteers, as previously spoken, in a wide range of land care activities. In addition, the construction of the nesting facilities for the endangered black cockatoos has brought in a great deal of very satisfactory acknowledgement of the SJ Shire, not only in Australia, but also, I understand now, in a European publication on endangered species. So it really is a great achievement from all involved, and I thank the Shire for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Wigg. That concludes public statement time this evening. We'll move to item 4, which is petitions and deputations. Can I please ask Mr. JJ Stevens to come forward and read your deputation in regard to item 10.1.1, development application, proposed amendment to delete condition of development approval, lot 8726 Carborough Drive, Cardup.
Evening, Council. Yeah, so that's exactly what you said. The present application for the arena lights to support our arena lights. A light study was assessed at a 35-degree angle by accredited lighting specialists, which met all the Australian rules and regulations, which also confirms the low light is not resulting in amenity impacts to the adjoining properties. Full lighting reports are in the application. We have also tried to source shrouds for the lights previously, but they don't make them for these small type of lights. Furthermore, we have already angled the lights down to a 14-degree angle to minimize the light to the south-facing property, as requested and recommended by the Shire, even though it already meets the Australian standards at a 35-degree angle, as stated on the lighting report, and that doesn't bother the south-facing neighbour either. The south-facing neighbour has given us a written statement and that he hasn't got a problem at all with the lights, and that he supports them as it is also in the application. We ask for the council to consider our application with no conditions, as we have already angled down the lights and done everything the Shire has requested and asked for us and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I please ask Mr. and Mrs. Trevor and Sue Simmons to come forward and read your deputation regarding item 10.1.1, development application, proposed amendment to delete condition of development approval, lot 8726 Carborough Drive, Cardup. That's fine.
This is obviously regarding item 10.1.1. Regarding the spill from the arena lights, my chickens need to be locked up at night once dark in their coop for protection from foxes. They are not locked up permanently in a coop, as applicant states. Need to get the facts correct. They are let out into a very large yard in daytime. At night, when arena lights are on, you need no torch to go and do this, as enough spillage of the lights to see very well. Page 2, applicants' comments regarding need for arena lights state that they need the arena lights for use in hot weather to ride when the heat is cooled down, and animal welfare needs to be taken into account. He states that the Equestrian Australia rules state that horses must not be ridden in heat above 35 to 36 degrees, but fails to say that the rule applies to Equestrian Federation run shows and events. Mrs. Stevens and their children, however, have been seen on many occasions riding in the middle of the day in 37+ degrees temperature for over an hour, jumping, etc., So the need to have arena lights at night for the welfare of their horses is a bit far from the truth. The applicant can't be too concerned about their own horses' welfare riding in the heat in the middle of the summer days, so why the need for arena lights? Page 7. The applicant states that our outside security lights are just as bright if you look at them directly. The issue here isn't about looking into the lights as applicant states, but about the light spill. The difference is we have 3 security lights that are only 50 watts each that are on for approximately 5 minutes of movement outside, so we can see if there's anything there. As the applicant says, quote, the purpose of the light is to be able to see. Well, I would like to see if we had an intruder or something out there that shouldn't be there. The applicants have 6 lights facing the arena and 3 lights in their own house, facing their own house. The council even commented on how bright the lights were for this type of environment at the 19th of September 2022 council meeting. Page 8. The applicant states that the arena lights need to be safe and have no shadowing, etc. to be safe. I can understand that to a certain degree. Other arenas I've seen do not seem to have lights as powerful as the applicants and intruding into other properties. The applicant also states my photo of the arena lights taken from my back veranda that the surrounding areas are black. Our shed is blocking off some light and it is only a phone camera that at night doesn't take the best photos, so not getting the best light spill, but clearly shows how high up the trees the lights shine. These trees are at least 4 to 6 metres off the boundary fence of the south property. Page 10. The arena lights do shine in your eyes at night when driving in. It's like a car with high beam on, and I fail to see what the applicants comment about sitting in the car and that the car has a roof has to do with it and must have sight problems and shouldn't be driving. So anyone that is blinded by high beams of cars shouldn't be driving as they have eye problems. Really, I'm sure all of us have been blinded at some time by high beams, so none of us should be driving. Page 11. The applicant states that we are always out taking photos of the arena lights whenever they use them. The only reason we have taken photos since January was because a stop notice from the Shire was given to them to not use the lights till sorted out. But once again, they broke the rules by continuing to use them. Taking photos was the only proof that the lights were being used. We have never taken photos of any of them riding in the arena. Our concern is the lights. Once again, it's proof of light spill, and most of the photos do not show their property anyway, just the light spill on the trees in the southern property. The applicant states there's been non-stop complaints from April 2022. The only complaints from us have been arena lights, dust from the arena, still brought into the paddock, Fifth and Cattery, still brought into paddock in Fifth 5 in April 2022 and Cattery in July 2022. Although we have been accused of the only people putting in complaints, there were complaints about a lot of other issues, but not from us. In the equine plan submission by applicants last year, a neighbour on the other side put their submission in for it, and part of it is about the arena lights shining into their bedroom. Their submission from them is on page 2 of this summary of submissions. Mr. Stevens would not come over to the fence line and discuss the dust, and Mr. Stevens would not come over to the fence line and discuss the dust when Mr. Simons waited at the fence for about 10 minutes to discuss the silica dust when she was raking the area with a machine and had one of her small children out with her. And you could not see the machine for the silica dust. Not much concern for her child's health breathing in silica dust. The applicants left us no choice but to put our complaints in writing to the Shire as they were breaking Shire health regulations with the silica dust. All we wanted to ask was for them to turn the sprinklers on before riding and raking. The sprinklers that the previous owner installed, not the applicants, as they stated in their equine management application. Another lie. Page 12. The applicant states the photos of the lights used in this summary of submissions cannot be used as not time and date stamped. I have no idea, as I didn't print this up, but they are all on my phone, the time and date, if anyone wants to verify it. Page 13. The applicant states they are not wanting to check the letterbox for fear of more fines or issues. It's simply, once again, in their own words spoken to us, just stick to the rules and there would be no problem, not be a problem. We are not the ones breaking all the rules. I fear going down the back of our property now without my husband with me, as we've been called over to the fence many times and arguments started by applicants. They tell us to leave them alone. It's the other way around. We had never started anything over the fence. Page 17. Applicants state why we did not complain about the arena before they moved in, as arena was built 4 years ago. We had no reason to do, as the previous owners didn't have arena lights then, and the arena was hardly ever used, as the applicant's husband got very ill with cancer, so didn't have time to ride. But if they did use the arena, the previous owners put the sprinklers on, so no dust problem. The sprinklers that the applicant stated in their equine application that they installed. Another lie. The arena also does not have any of the drainage under it, as stated in their equine application, as we advise the Shire of this, but no one seems to have checked it. So that's another lie. They have told the Shire, but it appears it has been passed. Now, it seems that they do things and then suffer the consequences after, like the arena lights and other complaints by others about the huge amount of trees cut down and trying to open up very large machinery hire business from a special rural property. And there are more, I believe. The applicants have frequently told us they have money and they'll get what they want and tell us.
Mr. Stevens, can you please sit down? Thank you. You have been given the opportunity to present a statement this evening. The applicants have applied and got permission to have a deputation presented, of which they are doing. Thank you.
Now I've lost. I'll go page 20. We agreed with what the Shire recommended at the September 2022 meeting that the lights should face north, pointing at their own property. This is not what the applicants want. The applicant says it's not just about what we want. No, that's exactly right. Are they considering anybody else or in the future? I would say it's all about them, really. They come here from the suburbia and think they can just change all the rules set out by the Shire for this lovely special rules.
Excuse me, can you please sit down? Can you please sit down? Can you please sit down, and can you please apologise for the language you have used, or you will be asked to leave the premises? Thank you. If you disrupt the meeting again, you will be asked to leave. Mr. Denham, can you please complete the deputation?
This has been a very lovely place for 25 years, not anymore. Attachment 3, deemed revisions C167. Figure 5 clearly shows that our water tank and shed have light spill to be able to see them on the westbound lot boundary. These are approximately 50 metres from the arena. It also shows considerable light spill on the south lot boundary. Our concern is that given the drone is quite high and well above the tree canopy, it does not show the light spill. It is actually under the tree canopy, but my photos do. The light spill is much more than 3 metres as stated. The trees are approximately 4 to 6 metres back from the boundary fence. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Denham. Can I please ask Mr. William Marshall from Eden Life regarding item 10.1.2, proposed lifestyle village grouped dwellings and incidental communal facilities, lot 59, 60 and 61 Briggs Road and lot 62 Thomas Road, Byford, to come forward and present your deputation, please.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to councillors for the opportunity to speak, and also to the council officers. I have had the opportunity to provide some visuals, some information I provided to councillors last week. I just wanted, if I could, to cover off quickly on some of the elements of the community that we are proposing outside of the planning matters that you have before you, noting that council officers have provided a recommendation already. Moving through the model of offering in here, I know that there is already a community in Serpentine that provides something similar. I thought I'd at least go off and just present some of the material that we would be offering in our model, hopefully giving you a feel for the sort of asset that might come to the community. We have 202 homes here, which will introduce around 350 new residents into the community once it's fully occupied. We have a focus on affordability, which is the long-term lease. So we remove the land component from within the purchase arrangement. So effectively what's happening is that each of the residents get a long-term lease of 60 years. We build our community facilities up front. So as the development is taking place, we're already planning the community facilities, and they're not built subsequent, but built so that the residents are able to utilise the facilities as soon as they take occupancy of their home. It's a large solar-based community, so already have a community that's operating out of Australand, and the material that you would have viewed in the material that sent you already hopefully gives you a feel for what the quality of the asset will be for the residents themselves. So the solar community offers the opportunity for residents to be provided with free power. We have a focus on sustainability, and that's really through our recycling programs that we run through the community. We are the owner and operator, and have a management present on site. So all of the weekly fee that's paid covers all of the costs, the outgoing costs in relation to rates, taxes, those sorts of matters. I did give you the opportunity to have a review of the superannuation fund report that's produced quarterly to give you an understanding of sorts of fees that people would normally be paying if they retired and they were living in residential community. All of the rebates that are available to the community, as it generally spends for 65 years and over, are still available to all of our community members. Of course, some of these matters that I go to in relation to affordability, we have no stamp duty that's applicable because of the model offering. And of course, we, like other communities, there are no exit fees associated with our community operations at all. In terms of the community itself, in terms of how it's operated, I did say to you we had an on-site staff, and so with that, we have an accountability in terms of delivering what we say we're going to deliver. We do operate under the residential codes and also the applicable legislation under the long-term tenants regulations. So our focus is on 55 and over. Generally, we tend to see around about 65 years in age when of residents are purchasing. I did mention that we do have that long-term accountability. As we're looking for an approval, we're able to demonstrate that we are delivering on those commitments that are made to the community and have that accountability. The homes themselves, while they're identified as relocatable, they're pretty hard to actually distinguish between a home that's delivered into the community as a residential community. Although, as I said, they're relocatable, they do sit on concrete floors. They are steel frame, colour-bond roof, and they have a high amenity within the actual homes themselves. In terms of the economics, we have about $15 million to spend on our civils and earthworks. Our clubhouse community facilities generally come in at about $7 million, and there's about $55 million worth of home construction to go onto that site. I did mention that we have about, we're expecting about 350 residents, that sort of an occupancy of about 1.6 people per home. Sounds a bit odd, but that's generally how it equates to. And we do employ all of our on-site support teams, either through local contractors or employees direct. We are looking to try and provide that diversity in housing options for older Australians, and we think this is a really good asset that's going to be able to achieve that. We look at spending around about $1 million per annum in our operational budget, and that's ongoing, obviously, for the life of the community at this stage, focusing on about 60 years for our initial lease period. Happy to take any questions on those matters.
Thank you for your deputation this evening.
Madam President, am I allowed to ask a question, please?
Councillor Duggan?
Thank you. When it comes to services that you provide after the establishment is developed, electricians, plumbers and so forth, do you tend to use local services, or are you got your own company that you tend to use between Australand and your other places?
Same for Australand. We use all the local contractors and or employees that are have a better knowledge of the local community, and they're just easy to actually contact and respond, generally, particularly around emergencies. It's often having to engage in residents need support.
And a subsequent question, if I may.
What's the number of full-time equivalent positions are you considering that will be required for your general running of the facility?
We employ about three, equivalent of full three-time people in terms of direct administration, and in terms of maintenance, a further person. And we probably need access to around 30 different contractors, and that would be localised.
Thank you.
Could I please ask Mr. Kieran McGovern from Road Group regarding item 10.1.3, proposed child minding centre, lot 9511 Briggs Road, Byford, to come forward and read your deputation this evening?
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, councillors, members of the public gallery and staff. Just a minor correction, if I may, Madam President. My name is David Mayran from Road Group, and Kieran had submitted the application for a deputation on my behalf.
Thank you.
I'll be speaking in support of the proposed childcare or child minding centre at lot 9511 Briggs Road in Byford. And Road Group acts on behalf of Spagnola Developments Proprietary Limited in relation to this matter. Spagnola Developments Proprietary Limited are under contract to purchase 6 lots approved as part of the Byford Meadows Stage 7 subdivision. Subdivision works associated with Stage 7 are substantially progressed at this stage. We have reviewed the RAR prepared by the Shire's Planning Department and acknowledged the recommendation that the development be approved, subject to some 18 conditions. We acknowledge the officer's recommendation for approval. However, wish to reiterate our concerns in relation to conditions 7, 16 and 17 as per the written deputation provided to the Shire. Matters relating to conditions 7 in particular have been raised during the public statement by this ILC earlier this evening as well. Condition 7 comprises 4 parts, which are set out in the officer's report. I won't repeat those in full. However, it's understood that parts 1 and 2 of condition 7 would be satisfied as part of subdivision works associated with Byford Meadows Stage 7, which would be completed prior to an application for a building permit in any event. And accordingly, these aspects of condition 7 are accepted. Parts 3 and 4 relate to works that do not abut or directly relate to the proposed child minding centre. We therefore consider the road and footpath upgrading works to be unreasonable and should be deleted. Our reasons follow. In relation to the Larson Road footpath extension, which is condition 7.3, the length of footpath that would need to be constructed to satisfy the condition would be in excess of 200 metres. There would be a very low demand, if any, from existing residents along Larson Road wanting to walk to or from the development, as there are less than 10 houses in total within a 400 metre notional walking distance. In any event, parents would generally be expected to drive to the centre rather than walk. Works required to construct a footpath in association with roadworks required by condition 7.4 would be significant and would impose an unreasonable and inappropriate burden on the developer of the child minding centre. In any event, the demand for this section of footpath to be provided would only occur when either the school site is developed or alternatively when the land east of Briggs Road, which is within the approved Briggs Larson Local Structure Plan, is subdivided. So for those reasons, we request part 3 of condition 7 to be deleted. In relation to the Briggs Road upgrades, a 160 metre section of Briggs Road would need to be upgraded to satisfy the condition. The Shire has previously sought to have the developer of the Byford Meadows subdivision undertake the Briggs Road upgrading works that are now set out by condition 7.4, including as part of the Stage 7 subdivision works and as part of an earlier subdivision relating to lot 370, which is the school site. It was successfully argued by the subdivider and the project engineer at the time that these works were unreasonable on the basis that the works should only be undertaken as part of the development of the school site. This was accepted by the Shire's engineers and the relevant conditions cleared at the time. The fact this matter has been raised again now appears opportunistic and does not satisfy the relevant tests for relevance or reasonableness of the planning condition. It is our view the road upgrading works should reasonably only be applied at a time when either the school site is developed or otherwise when the land east of Briggs Road, which is within the approved Briggs Larsen Lake Structure Plan, is subdivided. Project traffic engineer for our development has provided a summary analysis of traffic volumes relevant to Briggs Road. And most significantly, as was referred to earlier this evening, the development is expected to generate only in the order of 34 morning peak trip movements and 34 AM peak trip movements. And hence the volume of traffic generated by the proposal is not material and will have no impact on the function of this section of Briggs Road. Therefore, the development would not warrant the requirement for this section of Briggs Road to be upgraded at the developer's cost. And for these reasons, we request part 4 of condition 7 be deleted. Conditions 16 and 17 relate to developer contributions. And again, I won't repeat these conditions in full. Whilst conditions 16 and 17 are recommended to be applied to this development approval, they were also included as conditions of the stage 7 subdivision approval. And as such, contributions required for the 6 lots comprising the child mining centre site will already have been paid as part of the preceding subdivision. We accept that the 6 lots we accept that if the 6 lots were instead created as a single lot, which isn't proposed, the Shire would wish to have a mechanism to require contributions to be provided as part of the development of the site. However, it's our understanding the development contribution plan would not require contributions to be paid for all 6 lots, and upon development of the child mining centre, for those contributions to be paid again. Therefore, whilst the retention of conditions 16 and 17 is provisionally accepted, this would be on the basis that an accompanying advice note be included as part of the Shire's recommendation to the JADA to the effect that, with regard to conditions 16 and 17, if contributions have been received from the constituent lots created as part of the preceding subdivision approval, then no further contributions for the development will be required. This would give us comfort to know that our understanding that only one contribution would be required per lot, but not in addition to that for the development of the site. So to conclude, we appreciate the Shire's recommendation that the application for a child mining centre at lot 9511 Briggs Road might be approved. We also respectfully request the following amendments to the recommended conditions in summary. Deletion of condition 7 part 3 and condition 7 part 4, and inclusion of an advice note to accompany conditions 16 and 17. That concludes my deputation. Should councillors have any questions, I'd be happy to respond. Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation this evening. Item 5 is the President's report. Good evening and welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting for May 2023. I would like to begin tonight's by acknowledging 2 important funding commitments relating to our Shire announced as part of the West Australian Government's state budget last week. Firstly, $36.3 million was allocated to deliver the Byford Health Hub. This is a major commitment securing the future of the Health Hub, which will provide an integrated and extensive health service for our Shire's most populated suburb. This is an increase to the total commitment of $11.6 million. This is an increase to the total commitment of $11.6 million. Secondly, an additional $2 million was committed to fund stage 1A of the Kiernan Park Recreation and Sporting Precinct. Each of these projects play a major role in our journey to providing contemporary facilities for our growing community. Council and Shire staff have advocated extensively to secure support for these projects, and on behalf of both, I thank the state government for their commitment to our community. Moving on, it was great to see such a strong attendance at SJ's local Anzac Day services last month, despite the wet weather. It's always an honour to present at the Anzac Day ceremony. Congratulations to the Serpentine Jarrahdale RSL and the Shire staff who worked hard to deliver both the dawn service and the traditional service. Sticking with the theme of events, I was pleased to attend the launch of the Shire's Equine Road Safety Campaign last month. As Western Australia's leading equine community, horses play a major part in the lives of many SJ residents, and ensuring their safety while using our roads is a key priority for the Shire. With the start of National Road Safety Week that started yesterday, I would urge all road users to drive and ride safely on our roads. It was also great to meet with the Bushfire Advisory Committee to discuss the ongoing mitigation works currently occurring across our Shire. Mitigation burns are an important part of keeping our community bushfire prepared, with key burns recently carried out along the Southwestern Highway and Rapids Road. Thanks to the Shire staff and local Bushfire Brigade volunteers who have overseen these important works. I would like to close tonight's report by acknowledging the hard work and effort that went into preparing the SJ Food and Farm Fest. Unfortunately, the event had to be called off at the last minute due to severe weather. However, the work of the Serpentine Jarrahdale Food and Farm Alliance in the lead up was extensive. The Shire is proud to be a major supporter of the Food and Farm Fest, and we look forward to working with this dedicated local group in the future. As always, my full calendar can be viewed on the following pages. Item 6 is declaration of councillors and officers' interest. Chief Executive Officer Mr. Paul Martin has declared a financial interest in item 8.1, a special CEO Employment Committee meeting held on the 1st of May 2023. The nature of the interest is the CEO Employment Committee deals with the matters regarding his employment. The extent of the interest is that he is the CEO. Mr. Martin will leave the chambers while this item is discussed. Shire President Councillor Michelle Rich declared an impartiality interest in item 10.2.3, procurement arrangement for natural resource management services. The nature of the interest is I am a community board member for Landcare SJ. The extent of the interest is I am a community board member for Landcare SJ. Shire President Councillor Michelle Rich declared an impartiality interest in item 10.2.4, licence for 12 Patterson Street, Mundijong. The nature of the interest is I am a community board member for Landcare SJ. The extent of the interest is that I am a community board member for Landcare SJ. Move to item 7, which is confirmation of minutes of previous council meetings. 7.1 is the ordinary council meeting held on the 17th of April 2023. Can I please have a mover for these minutes? Thank you, Councillor Atwell. Councillor Duggan, are you happy to second?
Yes, thanks, Madam President.
Thank you. Is there anybody opposed to these minutes? Motion is carried unanimously.
Madam President, I've declared a financial interest in the next item, so I'm going to leave the room.
Thank you. Item 8 is receipt of minutes, all reports and consideration of adoption of recommendations from committee meetings held since the previous council meeting. 8.1 is a special CEO Employment Committee meeting held on the 1st of May 2023. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Strange. Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Bias. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Mr. Martin, the Officer's recommendation or the council resolution was passed unanimously. Item 8.2 is a special audit risk and governance committee meeting held on the 8th of May 2023. Can I please have a mover for this motion? The motion before us is up on the board for councillors. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Atwell. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 9 is motions of which notice has been given. 9.1 is notice of motion, environmentally sustainable design considerations for development within the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Strange. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 9.2, notice of motion, coordination of telecommunication infrastructure and future growth within the Shire. Can I please have a mover for this motion?
Madam President, could I propose an alternate motion, please?
Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino.
I have circulated it this afternoon, so hopefully everyone's received it.
Councillor D'Agostino, can I suggest for the benefit of the gallery, you identify what the change is you're proposing?
Yes, it's a new paragraph 2 that says, following completion of part 1, request the CEO to prepare a report to council within 60 days of the forum, recommending any further amendments required to the current local planning policy number 4.6 for telecommunications infrastructure to ensure such policy represents best practice with a focus on ensuring that telecommunications carriers work together to utilise existing tower infrastructure where possible.
Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino. Can I please have a seconder for the alternate motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there anybody opposed to this alternate motion before us?
Not opposed, Madam President, but I've got some questions, if I may.
Thank you, Councillor Bias.
My first question is to the CEO. Do you have any idea on the numbers of telecommunications providers that are likely operating in the area? I imagine it'd be the big 2 plus some wholesaling commercial providers.
I imagine so. The Director of Development Services might have a better idea of that than I am.
Now, beyond what Councillor Bias has mentioned, I think that would be a general assumption that the big 2 plus a selection of others.
My second question is perhaps to Councillor D'Agostino and Duggan. What do you mean by a forum? Like, do you have a specific idea as to what constitutes a forum?
Councillor D'Agostino, are you happy for me to answer that? This was a discussion that I had with Mr. Trosek, who is our Director of Development Services. And it's a nice general term to sum up a way where it's an informal meeting where things can be discussed openly. And it's about ensuring we are putting on the table exactly where we stand. And that is that we don't want a repeat of what's happened previously at Whitby, where we had a development without the appropriate infrastructure that was put in years later. So a forum was a nice general term that would indicate a relaxed and easy and amiable conversation between all party holders that was then going to get a result rather than it be put into a formal setting.
Sure. So there's a time frame on the second part. Do you envisage a time frame on the first part? And the context of all this is I didn't know how many cats you'd need to herd, and whether there were any prescriptive things that you wanted out of the forum. So would you see a time frame being on the first section, or are you quite satisfied as to when the CEO can herd the respective telecommunication cats?
I admit I hadn't looked at a time frame, but with your consideration, I think that if you'd like to add that, I'd be happy to.
Honestly, I have no strong feelings about it. It was more better understanding your ideas around forum and how many. But if you're satisfied for that to be in the officer's discretion, then I'm quite satisfied. Thank you, councillors and Madam President and Director and CEO.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Bias. Is there anybody opposed to the motion we have before us? Motion is carried unanimously.
Councillor D'Agostino, can we just get a reason for the difference, please? I think it's fairly straightforward, but maybe not reason.
Yes, to encourage further discussion on the location of mobile phone towers.
Item 10, Chief Executive Officer reports. 10.1 is Development Services reports. 10.1.1, Development Application, Proposed Amendment to delete condition of development approval, Lot 8726 Carborough Drive, Cardup. Can I please have a mover for the motion? Thank you, councillor Duggan. Can I please have a seconder? Can I please have, thank you, councillor Strange. Is there anybody opposed to this motion?
Just make sure you can see my hand, Madam President.
Thank you, councillor Coles. Councillor Atwell, are you opposed to the motion? Thank you. Councillor Bias, thank you. Councillor Duggan, would you like to open debate, please?
Certainly. Thanks, Madam President. I actually took the liberty to go for a drive and visited the lot in question. I spoke to the neighbour named Pierre, who lives directly to the south side and is most affected by these lights. We had a good look at the time, and he was certainly not concerned by the lights. He also took me to the very west side of his property. So admittedly, I didn't go into the property that is the one that's expressed concern, but I was right on the boundary, and I could see where there was some protection for their house from the lights by their own infrastructure that they had there, their own sheds and water tanks and so forth. So even though I could see that there was spill from the lights, and where it had gone based on the photos as well, I could see where there was some protection for their house. Ideally, we would like lights to be purely on one property. The unfortunate thing about living in a community where we don't all live 100 kilometres apart is there has to be some give and take. So for that reason, based on what I saw myself, I'm happy to support this motion.
Thank you, councillor Duggan. Councillor Strange, would you like to speak or reserve?
I'll reserve. Thanks, Madam President.
Thank you. Councillor Coles, would you like to speak against the motion?
Thank you, Madam President. From the outset, I foreshadowed that if this motion was unsuccessful, that I would be foreshadowing the officer's recommendation with the removal of paragraph B. Now, the reason I say that is we've got to be careful in this place, and I've been guilty of it far too often, I suppose, is emotions. So let's take the emotions out of this matter that's before us tonight, and let's look at it on the facts and the merits of the application. And the key thing for me, it's certainly something that looms particularly large for me, is listening to the experts. And in this situation, the experts are the accredited lighting specialists who say that the lighting, as it is at the moment, actually approves and is compliant. So let's take away the emotions. Let's take away the previous animosity between the neighbours. And unfortunately, we can't always get along with neighbours. So let's take out the animosity. Let's take out the emotions. let's remove ourselves, let's take a step backward even, and look at the facts that we have on the table. The facts are that the lighting is appropriate, the lighting does comply, and the lighting is only on for 120 minutes or 2 hours, and that's from 1800 to 2000, and that'll actually be less in summer. So I think the applicants have done the right thing. The additional officer's recommendation of paragraph B, I think, is too onerous. And notwithstanding the outburst tonight, notwithstanding the emotions that are at play here, which obviously loom large, the thing that must convince us as councillors is the facts. Those of us have been to court, and the only thing we're worried about in court is the facts. There's no emotions. It's an objective process, and we look at the facts. The facts are there's a lighting report done, and the lighting report is compliant. So I foreshadow the officer's recommendation with the removal of paragraph B. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Coles. Is there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? I'm happy to speak for the motion just to give other councillors the opportunity to speak, given that our standing orders need a for and against speaker. Councillor Atwell, would you like to speak against?
Yes, Madam President, notwithstanding the fact that obviously emotions do come into play here, my as you probably have picked up before, generally the retrospective attitudes of retrospective aspects of different items that come to us have been a bit of a bugbear of mine over the years, where things are done and then approved later, etc., etc. I do know that some of these lights are extremely bright. Probably my biggest concern is it's not quite in the right area. If I was going to do it myself, I would have probably bought a property somewhere else and maybe located the lights where they didn't, where there wasn't the overflow onto anyone's property. But as I say, the retrospective part of the argument is the thing that really does get to me after a while. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Atwell. Is there any other councillors like to speak for the motion?
Sure.
Thank you, councillor Mack.
I'm going to ask the officers reasoning, considering the plan, rules and regulations and the reports. Sorry. Apologies again for getting my microphone. Just the officer's recommendation part B, which has been foreshadowed to be removed, and considering the planning that has the planning framework before us, can the officers provide any reasoning for that condition and why it was in their recommendation?
Director, are you able to respond to the question from councillor Mack?
Certainly. Thank you for the question through you, Madam President. It was with the endeavour to limit the light spill to no more than 3 metres to the south, noting that the southern adjoining landowner, the current landowner, is comfortable with the current situation. I guess we're looking at ultimately the long term, so that any subsequent landowner, there's an outcome whereby the light spill's limited to, I guess, that part of the property you usually associate with your fire break.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Duggan, would you like to close, please?
Thanks, Madam President. Thanks, Councillor Atwell, for your points. And I do agree with you, retrospective approval certainly doesn't sit comfortably with me either. However, in this case, I am aware that the lights were not put in by the current owners. The current owners bought the property with the arena and the lights already set up. I did have a discussion with the owners about that, and they just said that they weren't aware that, they had to go through the process. They are now aware, and they will be more careful with that in future. So I think there has been lessons learnt in this situation. But like I say, I do completely understand the concern for retrospective requests like these. I'm not a believer myself of asking for permission after things are already done, but I can certainly understand how this has occurred. Thanks.
Thank you, councillor Duggan. All those in favour of the motion we have before us? All those against? Motion is carried 5-4.
We have the votes recorded, please, Madam President.
Thank you. Councillor Duggan, Minute Secretary, can we please have the votes recorded? Item 10.1.2, proposed lifestyle village grouped dwellings and incidental communal facilities, lot 59, 60 and 61 Briggs Road and lot 62 Thomas Road, Byford. Can I please have a mover for the motion that we have before us? Thank you, councillor Duggan. Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Atwell. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Lot 10.1.3, proposed child minding centre, lot 9511 Briggs Road, Byford.
Madam President, I would like to propose a alternate amended motion, please.
Thank you, councillor Stratton.
Thank you, Madam President. What I'm proposing is an additional condition Q that reads, it was earlier circulated to fellow councillors, that reads, prior to operation of the development, a suitable pedestrian crossing treatment comprising of crossing lights shall be provided between the subject land and the public open space on the north side of Indigo Parkway to the satisfaction of the Shire on advice of Main Roads WA, in brackets, who will be required to separately approve such crossing treatment and lights. And that's it.
Thank you, councillor Stratton. Can I please have a seconder for the alternate motion?
Madam President, I don't want to second it per se, or not at this point. But can I ask a question? Is there an indicative cost for that crossing to be constructed?
Director, are you able to provide an indicative cost at all?
Thank you, Madam President. I wouldn't be able to give you a solid answer as to what kind of lights would be employed, whether it would be a dedicated traffic signal that stops traffic and allows pedestrians to pass, or whether it would be more a flashing signal that alerts people to pedestrians crossing in the vicinity. So no, I can't give any firm indication as to the likely cost, sorry.
No worries, thank you. Can I please have a seconder for the alternate motion? Thank you, councillor D'Agostino. Is there anybody opposed to this motion?
Not necessarily opposed, Madam President, but I would like a question of the director, if I may.
Councillor Bias.
Through you, Madam President, to the director, I just want to confirm that such an inclusion is appropriate under the various planning frameworks, please.
Thank you for the question through you, Madam President. I guess in the tripartite test of whether the condition's reasonable, has a proper planning purpose and fairly relates to the proposal in front of us, I think just on initial thoughts, it would meet those tripartite tests. So there's nothing that jumps out at me as to a concern with the condition. Whether or not the JDAP would accept that, we'd have to obviously tell, and of course, whether council accept that is what we'll be debating.
Excellent. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Madam President.
Councillor Atwell.
I guess my question is probably, there would be various scenarios that could be put forward on the actual lighting. I don't know if Councillor Strawton has any particular plan, but I would imagine that would we, if this did go ahead, I mean, what sort of would we have to stipulate the type of lights we require, or what would be the procedure there, do you think? Because obviously there's a vastly different scenario with what might cost, especially cost might be to put such a thing up.
Director.
Thank you for the question. I think the conditions worded to keep it flexible. I think what we will find is Main Roads will dictate what they're willing to accept in terms of an appropriate treatment. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Madam President, if I may ask a question through the chair.
Councillor Duggan.
Thanks, Madam President. The 160-metre section of Briggs Road from Caspian Chase South that's included in this as condition E4, would that not, I understand from your previous responses, which I'm grateful for, that there's other things that will have in, that if there's other daycare centres, there can be shared costs. If there's other things like the intersections that may fall under the developers. What about that Briggs Road? Does that fall under the developer's responsibility primarily, or a DCP primarily? And this is almost a plan B if that falls down, or is it expected that first and foremost the proponent will need to fund that, please?
Director, you're able to respond to the question, please?
Yes, certainly. Thank you for the question through you, Madam President. There is no DCP or developer obligation for that section of road. So that's just important compared to what's happening on Briggs Road currently. That's associated with a subdivider developing land. However, this portion of road is adjoining an existing lot, which is set aside for a future primary school. So the consideration that the officer assessment has taken is the condition of that section of road, which is condition rating number 5, obviously, very, very poor condition, as well as the absence of footpath infrastructure. And we talk about the need and nexus of that associated with a development that's proposing additional traffic onto that section of road.
And may I ask a secondary question?
Councillor Duggan.
So if there was a second daycare centre that, say, was to be built, could that also have a partial responsibility to that 160 metres of road to be upgraded?
Director.
Yeah, thank you for the question through the chair. I guess my practice would be to recommend a condition which achieves the intended outcome. If two developments were approved exactly opposite each other, I'd probably speculate that both should have the same condition. because there's no certainty that either development will actually occur. Both may, or one may, or one may not. And if both did occur and both had the same condition, logic sort of would prove that there would be a way of having an approach to that infrastructure which is shared between the two applicants.
Thanks, Director, and thanks, Madam President.
Thank you. We have a mover and a seconder for the alternate motion we have before us. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Thank you, Councillor Coles. Councillor Strawtons, would you like to open debate, please?
Thank you, Madam President. On the 12th of May, the applicants sent through in advance a deputation which gave us the opportunity to ask the Director of Planning to provide feedback so that changes could be made if they were thought to be required by any councillor. The responses, detailed responses we've received from the Director, I think adequately address the concerns that were communicated from the applicant. Generally speaking, there are certain conditions applied that deal with prime aspects of the development that the applicant has put forward, such as the Larsen Road footpath. Certainly the applicant is also seeking to take advantage naturally of a busy intersection, busy area. And as a result, certain things need to be put in place, certain additional conditions that are applicable to this particular location to improve the health and safety of the children that will be attending this childcare centre. The Director has quoted the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage Planning Bulletin 72 of 2009 for childcare centres. Point D particularly relates to health and safety of children. So therefore, we have things like widening of roads, widening of footpaths, islands on Indigo Parkway. And our Shire was also determined earlier that we would like our childcare centres to be a little bit more reflective of the semi-rural location that we live in and not be just following cookie cutter style that is applied across most of Perth, unless a council area has also applied some local planning policy. So we have our local planning policy 4.24, where again, we would like, it was stated in there that access in and out, the location is close to, adjoins public open space, which is what we have across the road. And we need to have safe access in and out. So that's why I am proposing that Main Roads is spoken to about some crossing lights. We can't say in this case that a lollipop person provides the answer, because we do want in our Shire, our infants to be able to access open public space anytime during the day. So therefore, that's why the crossing lights are proposed. Local planning policy 4.24 does designate footpaths, pedestrian footpaths, and wide enough so that they are safe and we want these footpaths to go down Briggs Road South down to Eurythmic Way, because that's where the Transperth bus meets. And then we want them to go along Indigo Parkway to the car park, because that's where people will drive to park. So all the parts that the Director has proposed is keeping the eye on the health and safety of the infants. And I go back to the point, just to finish up, that quite rightly the applicant is choosing to be in a prominent location that's good for transport, It's good for visual exposure, but with that comes, unfortunately, if the cost is a big issue for them, it comes with an obligation that we want to keep our infants as safe as possible getting to and from such a busy intersection. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Strotlins. Councillor D'Agostino, would you like to speak or reserve?
Or reserve, thanks, Madam President.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Coles, would you like to speak against?
Thank you, Madam President. Notwithstanding the comments that have been made, I think they're all relevant and good comments. But I guess what looms large for me is two things. One is fairness, and the second one is equality. So let's just park those two words to the side for the moment. I guess for me, we as a Shire should be working with developers, not against them. There is far too much animosity already. Let's start working with people instead of against people. We want to encourage and welcome suitable development in this Shire. Because at the end of the day, and dare we say it, we're going to be talking about this very, very soon, it's that awful word that starts with R, and it's not Robert, although some may say that, it's rates. And here we have a applicant who's going to put a development in a suitable area, as previously mentioned, in a good area, but then we're turning around and saying, and don't forget, they will be paying rates, they are a ratepayer themselves, but we're going to turn around and say to them, oh, hang on, what you need to do is build a road. It's really interesting we talk about road building. It is an issue, it's probably the number one issue in this place. But certainly there's other ways I think we as a Shire should be getting funding for roads, and instead of getting the poor old applicant to build all this road, why don't we continue to advocate to the state and federal governments? And it's not lost on me that there's a federal and state election in 2025. So instead of getting the applicant to burden the cost, and I would submit it's an excessive cost that these applicants have to pay, why don't we do our job as a Shire? Why don't we do our job as councillors and advocate, which we have been doing, and let's continue to advocate, let's continue to get money for the roads instead of going back, and in this instance, they will become ratepayers, to pay for a road. Why should we get them to then pay for a footpath? And it's not lost on me, councillors, that the majority of people attending this childcare facility will be driving. So whilst that may not support my comments about the road does need upgrading, but perhaps there's other ways to that instead of the applicants, I would certainly submit that a footpath is probably wasted simply because mum and dad who are working full time, cost of living and all those good things we've heard about recently, will be driving their child or children to the childcare facility and drop them off. I don't know how many working parents would have time to walk their children to childcare. The whole point of childcare is the fact that they can go to work and they've got someone to look after their children. So I would submit unequivocally that the way that would work is by motor vehicles driving their children to that facility. So this brings me back to my 2 points I opened my debate with, and that was fairness and equality. How is this fair? How is it equality? Or how is it equal? And I sit here and I turn my mind to something like, and notwithstanding this is a state government facility, Byford Secondary College and Byford Secondary School. Here we are, if there ever was a need for children to cross the road safely, it is on Abernathy Road and it is at the Byford Secondary School. So what do? Do we turn around and get Mr Jones, the principal, to pay for a school crossing?
Councillor
Or do we advocate and do we speak to Main Roads and get them to do something in regards to that?
Councillor Coles, can you please stick to the subject matter that we have before us as part of your debate, please?
Thank you, Madam President. The second part I'll talk about is we've approved other childcare facilities in this area, and we have never asked another applicant to upgrade roads for another childcare facility. Now, notwithstanding they're not in the same area, and it also is not lost on me that Briggs Road again is closed this week, I think without any notice. But in any event, Briggs Road is closed and it's now being worked on. So Briggs Road is getting worked on now. But now we're going to ask these applicants who are trying to put a service in there, a childcare service for people, residents of Byford and the greater area. Now we're going to penalise them for doing that by getting them to build a road and a footpath. Quite simply, I would foreshadow that this application is approved and the responsible authority report is recommends it to be approved. But removal, as per the deputation, and they were talking about numbers, but my report has letters. I think it's D 3 and 4 to be removed, and then 16 they're talking about, but I can't find that in the report. But suffice to say, in line with the intention of the applicant, and that is to make it less onerous. And whilst I may be trying to be quiet in this place, I would certainly say my comments are certainly relevant. And again, we need to work with developers, not against developers, and continue to advocate for funding and not penalise people who want to try and invest in the Shire. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Coles. Is there any councillors who'd like to speak for the motion? Councillor Straughtons, would you like to close, please?
Thank you, Madam President. Absolutely. Look, the conditions that are in this motion are not there to discourage development. We absolutely do encourage, and we want to see such developments to be a great success. And it's my belief that these conditions will assist this applicant to be successful. There are also many other aspects of the development that's going on around this area that could help this applicant offset costs. But what is proposed here is to make sure that the base project does cover and tick the box for managing traffic and health and safety. And I'll read here Department of Planning, Lands and Heritages, section 3.2 I'll go down to section 3.6. A childcare centre should be approved only if it can be demonstrated that it will have a minimal impact on the functionality and amenity of an area and will not create or exasperate any unsafe conditions for children and families using the centre, or for pedestrians or road users. So I do not see that these conditions are against what is dictated to us from the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage. We certainly have examples with the storage centre on Southwest Highway where quite substantial road changes need to be made at the expense of that applicant so that their project could go ahead and be safe for road users. So again, I emphasise we are talking about infants here. We are talking about parents pushing prams that usually have more than one child they might be wrestling with. They might be quite flustered, so they need to be given the best conditions to keep them safe. Certainly, if there was anything else that happened in the Shire, let's say on another road like Abernethy Road, that was before we had our own local planning policy 4.24 that did emphasise the welfare of our infants. So I'm quite happy to put this to a vote now. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Straughtons. All those in favour of the motion that we have before us? Can you please put your hands back up? All those against? Motion is carried 6-3.
And I would ask the votes recorded. Thank you.
Minute Secretary, can we please have the votes recorded?
While that occurs, councillor Stratton's going to ask if you're happy with those reasons for the difference in the officer recommendation that was circulated. Or you want to change those?
I would like to add to that, please, CEO, and that being that keep those first words, that those being inclusion of a bit of pedestrian crossing lights, and then add the words in consideration of local planning policy 4.24 and Department Planning, Lands and Heritage Planning Bulletin 72/2009. Yeah, just capitalise the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage as a name, please. Thank you.
Item 10.1.4, proposed patio, lot 3451 Darren Way, Byford. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, councillor Coles. Can I please have a seconder for this motion? Thank you, councillor Atwell. Is there anybody opposed to this motion?
Not opposed, Madam President, but I do have a question or two for the director, if I may.
Councillor Byers?
My first question, Madam President, is if I could get some clarification on the nature of this application. So it's described as a development application, but my understanding of the state government reforms from 2020 was that patios were to be precluded from DAs and only required building permits. And I couldn't find an answer in the report. So I'm just hoping the director can clarify what approval this is. Thank you.
Director?
Certainly, thank you very much for the question. So the conditions associated with the minister's most recent reforms talk about the patio, and I'll just go to here we go. So page 149 of the deemed provisions require it to be compliant with the R codes. So anyone who's proposing a patio that seeks a variation of the R codes still requires a planning application. So this is one of those such applications.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, broader than this particular application, so the reforms proposed by the state government in 2020 have subsequently evolved to a point where it's not a blanket approval for all patios, but only those patios that are compliant with the R codes.
Yes, certainly. And every exemption, there's about 24 different types listed. They all carry conditions that essentially provide a limitation on that exemption. So any proposal that doesn't meet the conditions of the exemption still requires a planning permit.
Okay, a planning permit or a planning permit and a DA?
Sorry, a development approval in the form of a development application.
Right, excellent. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Madam President, for indulging me.
Thank you, councillor Byers. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.1.5, proposed civic building, career fire and rescue services fire station fire, lot 201 169 Dolly Road, Byford. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, councillor Byers. Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Atwell. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.1.6, local planning policy review. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, councillor Strange. Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Byers. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.1.7, Mundijong District Structure Plan, Precinct C, Watkins Road North variation request to create sub-precincts C1, C2 and C3. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, councillor Strange. Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Bias. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously.
Madam President, may I ask if we're able to, I know that according to our standing orders, you have the ability to change the order. And I know we've got some people here who are from Landcare who would like to have 10.2.3 dealt with sooner rather than later. Is there any possibility we could look at bringing that forward just so then they're able to leave before it gets too late? At your discretion, of course.
We're actually not that far off those items now. We only have another two or so items to go before we get to them. Item 10.1.8, Byford Health Hub, consideration of proposed memorandum of understanding. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, councillor Bias. Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Atwell. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.2, infrastructure services reports. 10.2.1, minutes of the Rivers Regional Council meeting held on the 20th of April 2023. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, councillor Bias. Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Straughtons. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.2.2, execution of sublease between the Sports Aircraft Builders Club Inc. and the Fire and Emergency Services Ministerial Body Reserve 25911 Yangetti Road, Hopeland, has been removed from the agenda and will come back to council at a later date. Item 10.2.3, procurement arrangement for natural resource management NRM services. Can I please have a mover?
Madam President, can I just draw councillors to the fact that very late this afternoon, and I apologise for the lateness, that we issued an amended officer recommendation, and for the benefit of the gallery, that amended officer recommendation just makes some minor changes to some of the wording in the agreement, and I might ask the director to go into any further detail if the councillors wish, but essentially for the gallery, at one point in time, there was a joint agreement for the use of the venue and the procurement of services, and they've been split up and dealt with as two separate reports. And there was some reference to the building in the services agreement, which has been identified. And so we're not proposing or recommending any change to any of the amounts or terms, just some conditions that we're suggesting be removed because they relate to the facility. If the council wants to, we could go behind closed doors and go through those line by line, and the councillors can see any changes to those if they wish.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Councillors, would you like to go behind closed doors so the director can run through the items?
Madam President, I've had an opportunity to review the attachment and I'm satisfied to move the amended officer's recommendation.
Thank you, councillor Bias. Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Duggan. Is there anybody opposed to the officer's amended recommendation? Councillor D'Agostino? Councillor Bice, would you like to open debate?
Thank you, Madam President. Without going into the details of those confidential attachments, I would just like to congratulate the Shire officers and Landcare for working together to produce this and the subsequent item. And Madam President, I'm satisfied with what's been presented.
Thank you, Councillor Bice. Councillor Duggan, would you like to speak or reserve?
I'll just speak briefly if I may, and that is to say that the good work that Landcare SJ staff do to ensure that the actual contact hours we have from volunteers, as well as sharing their knowledge extensively to our rural residents, is so incredibly important. And I think that we need to be offering them the 5-year as a form of stability, and so we can continue that good work with them, knowing that they have that 5 years. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Councillor D'Agostino, would you like to speak against the motion, please?
Thank you, Madam President. And obviously it goes without saying that the points I'm going to raise in no way detract from the good work that we all accept that Landcare do. And I think I'd just like to raise a couple of issues in opposition and note that I'd probably propose an alternate motion with some amendments to the resolution as it's tabled to cover off the issues I've raised. And the first of these really relates to the fact that it really is an annual licence, and the intention of item 3 of the schedule, and I think in fact it's item 3 of the officer's recommendation, which basically says that 3B, which says that for the remaining 4-year term, it'll be subject to the approval of the annual budget by the council each year. Now, I've clarified that with the officers, and what the intention is there is that this amount, as is inflated or as is indexed every year, will still be subject to an annual budget approval. Now, I don't think that wording is quite clear, and I think it probably is misleading in a way to allow our friends at Landcare and the like to perhaps consider that it is a 5-year contract, because it is almost an annual arrangement. So I would prefer that wording to be clarified. That's one. I think the late changes that were made leave me significantly ill at ease in relation to I suppose the credibility of the document, and I would prefer it to be deferred and to be properly reviewed by our solicitors. And the third issue that I've raised is in relation to the linkage between the contract for services and the licence. Now, I understand they've been split up. I think that someone maybe, and I'm happy to concede if I've missed it, but to me there should still be a linkage. So if this agreement that we are resolving to approve is terminated for some reason, then what happens with the licence? So I just think there's some pieces in all this that have been missed. And for example, and for those reasons, I'm opposed to the motion as it stands and propose an alternate motion if it was to be defeated.
Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino. So now the council would like to speak for the motion.
Madam President, I have a question of Councillor D'Agostino, if I may.
Councillor Bice.
Councillor D'Agostino, would you mind articulating what your foreshadowed motion would be, or alternatively, would you consider, if it doesn't negate the intent of this motion, going through it as amendments so that we can consider them individually?
Yes, that would be fine.
Councillor D'Agostino, would you like to put forward what your foreshadowed motion or your changes are?
In 3 of the officer's recommendation in 3B, subject to approval of each annual budget, the words would be for this annual funding, to make sure it's clear. So the words would be added after budget for this annual funding.
Madam President, I hate to butt in, but I mean, could we consider these as individual amendments just so that we can do it as we go?
Yes. If Councillor D'Agostino would like to go that way, yes.
That's fine. Thank you.
So the first amendment is to item
3B,
3B,
to insert the words after budget for this annual funding.
Madam President, I guess the council has an opportunity whether the mover and seconder are happy to accept those additional words or whether they want it done by a formal amendment.
Madam President, we've gone down that path before. I'd be far more comfortable with these being each individual formal amendments for council to consider on its individual merit, please.
Thank you, councillor Bias. Councillor Bias, are you recommending that we deal with this one?
I'm happy to take advice from the officers. I guess my concern is that we have previously gone down the path where movers and seconders have accepted amendments. And noting that there is the section of standing orders which allows anyone to speak against it, I would just be far more comfortable for those amendments to be considered and voted on, because I think they're worthwhile and that each one deserves its individual consideration.
Councillor D'Agostino, we'll deal with the first one and then move through them individually. The Councillor D'Agostino, that as written, is that the
For this annual funding, what's after the word budget, sorry. For this annual funding.
Take the words by council out, or the words by council in.
you're happy to move that amendment, Councillor D'Agostino? Can I have a seconder for that? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Strange. Is there anybody opposed to this amendment? Amendment is carried 8-0. Councillor D'Agostino, would you like to put up the second amendment that you have?
Yes. And that relates to the linkage between the contract of services and the license. And I propose a new paragraph 7, which says if the license for reserve 32180, if the license for reserve 32180 is terminated for any reason, I'll wait for you. If the license for reserve 32180 is terminated for any reason, then the contract for services is also terminated.
Madam President, if I could perhaps give a bit of context to the reason the officers initially proposed the separation of the two agreements. And that was at a time when the council called for tenders for the services. And I guess we as officers thought that if, for whatever reason, the council did not award the tender for the natural resource management services to SJ Landcare, that they would probably want to continue in any instance in any regard, and therefore needed the premises. So we thought that, notwithstanding what might happen with the we're now past that point and we're now at this point now, but notwithstanding anything that might change with funding from the Shire, that Landcare might like to keep the premises in their own right and get other funding from other sources or change their business model or something if for whatever reason the future Shire funding wasn't provided. That's why they were separated, so that the two, we didn't think that the two should be linked for that reason, that if for whatever reason that organisation make their own decisions if they didn't receive any funding from the organisation in the future. That's the context, but it's up to council.
That's then I'm happy to withdraw that.
So you want to withdraw that amendment, Councillor D'Agostino? Do you have a third amendment?
Oh, the third one is a relatively minor one. Paragraph 6 authorises the chief executive officer to sign the contract next, or not, instead of just to sign a contract, sign the contract and next, or however it's referred to.
Yeah, we would reflect it as it's written above in point 3, as contained in the contract in the confidential attachment 5. So perhaps, Madam Secretary, we could add that to the end of the point 6. Councillor D'Agostino, is that what you would think? As attached to the confidential attachment 5.
Thank you.
Councillor D'Agostino, are you happy with the wording as on the board?
Yes, thank you.
Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Strange. Is there anybody opposed to this amendment? Motion is carried unanimously. Amendment, sorry. Amendment. All right, so the substantive motion now stands with the 2 amendments included. Is there anybody opposed to the? So is there anybody who would like to speak for the motion as it stands before us now? Councillor Bias, would you like to close debate, please?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to echo Councillor Duggan's very valid point. Sometimes we get caught up with numbers and, the legalities of it, but what we're talking about here are volunteers. And they do an amazing work for us. So I look forward to the relationship continuing with Landcare SJ. And I'd like to thank Council for indulging me with standing orders. I think this produces a cleaner recommendation that we can hopefully all get behind. So, Madam President, I'm happy to put this amended, improved motion. Thank you, councillors, to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Bias. All those in favour of the motion we have before us? Motion is carried unanimously. Can I please ask that screen is turned back so that I can actually see it properly, because where I am sitting, I can only see that one properly. I can't see that one.
And Councillor Bias, we will need a reason for the difference in the officer recommendation.
I would take Councillor D'Agostino's point. It would be to clarify some contractual point, add extra clarity to the funding arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. Item 10.2.4, licence for 12 Patterson Street, Mundijong. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Bias. Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Straughtons. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.3, corporate services reports. 10.3.1, confirmation of payment of creditors April 2023. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Bias. Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Strawtons. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.3.2, monthly financial report, March 2023. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Bias. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.3.3, March 2023 quarterly budget review. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Bias. Is there anybody opposed to this motion?
Not opposed, Madam President. It's getting late and I'm tired. Can I just check that the adopts the March 2022 quarterly budget is incorrect? It should actually say adopts the March 2023 quarterly budget, please, on page 193.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan, for pointing that out. Councillor D'Agostino and Councillor Bias, you happy with that change to 2023?
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.3.4, budget adjustment for unallocated surplus. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino. Can I please have a seconder for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.3.5, councillor fees and allowances 2023-24. Councillors, the options are presented to in the officer's report for council's consideration. Do I have a councillor that wishes to move one of the options?
Chairman, I'll move option 1, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Atwell. Do I have a seconder for option 1? Thank you, Councillor Duggan.
Sorry,
Anybody opposed to this motion?
Madam President, can I just ask a question? Option 1, is that to remain as we are?
Director of Corporate Services.
That's correct.
The director has responded. Are you happy?
Oh, thank you, Madam President. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.3.6, Corporate Business Plan Performance Report, January to March 2023. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino. Can I please have a seconder for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is anybody opposed to this motion?
Not opposed, Madam President, but I do have a question, if I may.
Councillor Bias?
It's been a few years since I've been on ARG, but the question to the CEO, is it still standard practice for the corporate plan to go through ARG? Noting that we've got a critical item on it. Are those risks considered as part of the risk register?
I might ask the Director of Corporate Services to answer the question, actually.
Sorry, I probably articulated it poorly. So we've got one item on here that's listed as critical. So I'm keen to understand the interface that has with ARG and the risk register. It's the Kiernan Park Recreation Precinct construction of stage 1A is listed as critical, with the comment and remedial action listed, but I'm just curious to understand how that interfaces with the risk register, noting that it is quite a significant project. I'm happy for the director to take it on notice. I don't need an answer right now.
I will take it on notice, thank you.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Bias. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.3.7, review of delegations and authorisations 2022-2023. Can I please have a mover?
Madam President, if I may put forward an alternate motion, which I circulated earlier on this evening, please. That motion is point 1 stays as is. Point 2 approves the register of delegations and authorisations as contained within attachment 2 with the following amendments. The reference to the number of submissions within council conditions on delegations 11.1, 12.1.1 and 15.1.1 is amended from 3 to 2. Point 3 resolves that delegations 15.1.1 administration of local planning scheme number 3 and 15.1.2 administer development contribution plans as contained within attachment 2 as amended will commence on gazettal of local plan scheme number 3. And number 4 point remains unchanged, please.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Can I have a seconder for the alternate motion?
Madam President, could I just ask a question in relation to the amendment to point 2? Just in terms of the submissions, should it be submissions objecting to the proposal? I mean, I'm just worried that potentially people could be putting in a submission of support for an application and then be contributing to the matter being required to come before us.
I just ask the Director of Corporate Services or the Manager of Governance whether the wording of the delegation there refers to the objections or whether the Director of Development Services knows that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Read in the context of that wording, as it's currently written in the document, that issue is taken care of.
Thank you.
Can I please have a seconder for the alternate motion we have before us? Thank you, Councillor Coles. Is there anybody opposed to the motion we have before us? Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino. Councillor Duggan, can you please open debate?
Thanks, Madam President. Certainly, I appreciate that the Director of Developmental Services and his team and the CEO are trying to find ways that our council meetings are not so jam-packed. However, this is one factor that I just can't compromise on. My concern where we have got 3 or fewer submissions, you can have a block of land that has only actually got 3 neighbours. So every single neighbour could put in a submission against a development, and it could still go through and be approved according to what was previously submitted. That is why I wanted to look at an alternate motion which dropped that from 2 or fewer, so then council could be involved at that earlier stage. The reason being is because when I spoke to the director about this, he explained that it is their role to take on looking at rules and regulations only of planning. And yet we know so often when we come here, and I think that the lights issue on Carberry Drive explained it so well today, there are so many things that actually need a human touch. We're actually taking the time to go and visit and have a look at the actual surrounds and being familiar with what is local, because we are local government, can change the way that a decision is made. So for me to say that 3 or more, 3 or fewer submissions should go to just be dealt with on Shire, on the Shire staff, and not come to council, just didn't sit comfortably with me. I can understand sometimes there is vexatious neighbour, you know, 1 complaint. If there is, you know, 2, it's something that perhaps can be sorted. But like I say, especially if you've got a corner property where there is only 3 neighbours, if you have 3 people submitting concerns that, according to the wording here, either valid planning objections or valid planning concerns on an application, we could have every single neighbour who is against an application, and yet it could still go through if it fell into the correct rules and regulations. So that's why my compromise was down to 2 or fewer rather than 3 in the alternate motion. Thanks.
Thank you, councillor Duggan. Councillor Coles, would you like to speak or reserve?
I'll speak. Thanks, Madam President. I echo the comments as made by the mover. And quite simply, I'm pretty sure I'm here as a councillor to represent the ratepayers, and part of that, whether we like it or not, and for someone to turn around and say council laws have better things to do than worry about sheds and patios, I think is a disgraceful comment to make. And we are here to listen to our community, and I think tonight was evidence of that. I actually think that any objection should come to council, but that's probably an onerous task on staff, and I certainly don't want that. So this is where compromise has taken place tonight, and I'm happy for 2 or more. And I think the comments that have been made are quite salient. Quite simply, and I'll probably get shut down again for saying this because apparently it won't be relevant, but I'll say it is, and I will say it. 142 Bruns Drive, Darling Downs. That was a matter that came to council at the OCM in April, and there was some concerns there. Admittedly, it was a period of time, but I do not want to be a councillor who allows things to be approved on delegation by staff when 2 or more people are against it. So we are here to make the tough decisions. We need to look at the issues. We need to make judgment calls, and that's why we are here as councillors, quite simply. Otherwise, I might as well get rid of council and just have a board, and we'll just get the staff to make decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Coles. Councillor D'Agostino.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I would propose if this motion is lost, that the officers the officers' motion be put forward. And I hear and agree with a lot of what Councillor Duggan and Councillor Cole say. But I suppose I'm looking at this from an efficiency point of view, and I think 3 is the right number. And I can see the merit in arguing either 2 or 3. It's trying to find a balance between the number, and if we had more time, it would have been interesting to understand some of the statistics as to how many objections there are often received. But my gut feel is that 3 is about the right number, because sometimes there can be some politics at play when there's 1 or 2 parties. And I think 3 has that aura of objectivity that would mean that maybe there is a genuine issue. So for that reason, I'd be proposing the alternate motion of 3 if this was lost. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor D'Agostino. Any other councillors like to speak for the motion? Councillor Duggan, would you like to close, please?
Thanks, Madam President, and I thank Councillor D'Agostino for his points. I really have nothing to add except for to say once again that I feel that 2 is a number that sits more comfortably with me. Thanks.
All those in favour of the alternate motion before us? All those against? Motion is carried 5-4.
And if those votes can be recorded, please, Madam President.
And Councillor Duggan, we will need a reason for the officers change the officer recommendation for the minutes when the minute secretary's had a chance to do the recording of votes, please. So the councillors that were against, I recorded with Councillor Strange, Councillor D'Agostino, Councillor Atwell, and Councillor. I had against Councillor Strange, Councillor D'Agostino, Councillor Atwell, Councillor Richard. Everyone else voted for? And reason for the difference, Councillor.
Sorry, working on it as we go. To allow a balance of local councillors and Shire input into the decision-making process. Local council and Shire input.
Councillors or councillors?
Council.
Council.
Sorry, I probably said councillors before. Local council and Shire input into the decision-making process. Thank you.
Item 10.3.8, office accommodation project update to council. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Strawton. Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.4 is community engagement reports. 10.4.1 is major events grants, round 2, 2022-2023. Can I please have a mover for this motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Bias. Is there anybody opposed to this motion?
Sorry, Madam President, I'm not opposed. I've just got a question just with what happened with the Food and Farm Fest on the weekend. What does that mean for those funds? Are they able to be reallocated, or what is the status there? If someone could please answer that for me.
Director of Community Engagement, are you able to respond to that question, please?
Thank you, Madam President. The CEO and I are having a debrief meeting with the SJ Food and Farm Alliance on Thursday to do a debrief of the event and to understand where they're at with the event, funding, and from there we'll understand more and can provide a further update to council.
Subsequent question, if I can, through the chair. Does that, I suppose, there's two parts to this. One, is there a timeline for us to approve this tonight? And we'll just pause for that question. And the second part is, if there were funds left over from the Food and Farm Fest, could they then come into this round two, or is that not possible?
Director?
With regards to this round, from a timing perspective, I guess both events would be looking for certainty in regarding to what funding they may or may not receive from the Shire. In regards to any surplus funds that may be available from the Food and Farm Fest event, the policy does limit that a organisation can only receive up to $20,000. Byford Carrolls has sought around 19,000, so they could possibly receive an extra, $800. With regards to Jump Promotions WA, they were only seeking $13,000 from the Shire for their total event of 150,000. So unless there was further negotiation with that organisation, but I don't get the impression that they are seeking any additional funds.
Thank you. That answers the question. Thanks, Director. Thanks, presiding member.
Is there any councillors opposed to the motion we have before us? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.4.2, Local Emergency Management Committee Information Report. Can I please have a mover for the motion before us? Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino. Can I please have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Straughtons. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.4.3, 2021-2022 Annual Report. Can I please have a mover for the motion before us? Thank you, Councillor Coles. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Straughtons. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 10.5 is Executive Services Reports, of which there is nil. Item 10.6 is Confidential Reports, of which there is nil. Urgent Business. Item 11 is Urgent Business, of which there is nil. Item 12 is councillor questions, of which notice has been given, which is nil. Brings us to item 11, which is closure, and I declare this meeting closed at 9:41 p.m. Thank you, councillors and officers and members of the public gallery. Please